The man in charge of the DC Universe, James Gunn, has confirmed what DC Studios is bringing to the table at this year's San Diego Comic-Con. And well, with expectations sky high due to Superman coming out right before San Diego Comic-Con and Peacemaker a couple of weeks after, you're going to be disappointed to know that they're not bringing a whole lot. So there's something people need to understand about DC Studios that seems to be going way over their head. And it's really not fair because when people talk about DC Studios, they're putting them up on the same pedestal as Marvel Studios, which to me isn't fair. DC is just starting with their first live action project, Superman. Creature Commandos is technically the first project, along with maybe Peacemaker technically and the Suicide Squad, but for all intents and purposes, it's all on Superman. And then the second project that's hitting us is, of course, Peacemaker Season 2, and that's going to be a whole thing. And beyond that, we know a handful of projects, many of which were canceled and or put on the back burner, and they're trying to figure them out, like Waller, Paradise Lost, Swamp Thing. All those projects are currently in limbo. They're still trying to find their footing. Marvel Studios has their footing, and while they've stumbled a couple of times, they're still doing their thing and doing it rather well, I would say. So trying to compare the two, it's kind of stupid. And trying to expect DC Studios to come out swinging and announce something bigger than Secret Wars, I mean, I don't know what to tell you guys, but if you're expecting that, you're going to be disappointed. So with DC Studios, let's set expectations at a, well, if we get anything more than Superman and Peacemaker, let's be happy. Because we might just be getting that. So let's talk about what James Gunn said. And people always scream, source of this is a scooper or an insider and not official. Well, the source of this info is James Gunn. He's the one that was asked about what DC Studios is bringing to San Diego Comic-Con, if they're going at all. He said that they are. And then he said, and I quote, "It's just me and John Cena and Peacemaker." End quote. So here's what you need to understand about this one. First and foremost, Creature Commandos is out. If they talk about anything Creature Commandos, they might tease a little Season 2, but it's still early in development. They are going to focus on Superman, as by that time, it's going to be in its third box office weekend. We will know how the opening weekend did, we'll know the second weekend, and if they're going to hit that $1 billion mark that the entire industry and every fan has put on the film. Remember, this is the only comic book film this year that every single institution doing tracking or predictions has stated $1 billion guaranteed. So they're going to talk about that. They're going to talk about Superman. Whether or not the success of the film from critics' point of view and fans was anything, that will probably be addressed. They'll talk about this stuff. But the other big thing they're going to talk about is, of course, Peacemaker. Why? Because it's coming out like 2.5 weeks after San Diego Comic-Con. So naturally, that's going to be there. Chances are they might even screen the first episode, which DC Studios has done before, screenings, right? They might do something like that. So expectations officially are to not expect a whole lot in case you're thinking they're going to reveal the entire slate. Now, for just a second, let's focus on the slate they did announce previously. So here we are only focusing on these projects. Creature Commandos is out and getting a second season. Waller is stalled and possibly canceled. Superman Legacy is Superman and will be out. Lanterns is coming out next year. The Authority is dead. Paradise Lost is either dead or in limbo. Brave and the Bold is on back burner because they're trying to figure out the Batman Part 2. Booster Gold is dead. Supergirl is coming out next year. And Swamp Thing is regrettably once again on back burner and or dead. So what exactly could we expect at San Diego Comic-Con from DC? Because out of all of these, Only a couple are alive, and they're the ones coming within the next year. So there's not a whole lot. They can maybe talk a little bit about Clayface, but that's about it. So let's get into the second part of James Gunn's quote. And the second part of his quote was, though, of course, I'll talk about everything. End quote. So obviously he knows, especially when it's time for the Q&A section and a couple fans line up, they're going to ask him about everything. So make no mistake about it. He will talk about Supergirl. Supergirl is the next project coming out next year. I would not be surprised if this is where we get our first official reveal of the first poster, sort of like how we got Clark Kent right before they started shooting. It was, him in front of the orb, suiting up, sort of something like that. Or maybe even our first logo that says, Supergirl, next summer, or summer of 26, or whatever. I would fully expect they tease Lanterns. Lanterns also make sense. Just think about it for a second, right? It's coming at us in January, February, maybe as late as March. They're probably going to try to avoid Daredevil, so I'm assuming that February date, which was potentially leaked, sticks, so they'll reveal something about that. And since Superman is rumored to be featuring a cameo from Hal Jordan right at the end of the film during either the mid or post-credit scene, this would make sense. Show something for Green Lantern. Clayface is also undoubtedly going to have something mentioned. Maybe our first concept art. Maybe other characters that are going to be in it. I would say you could probably bet on Rick Flag being in this. Rick Flag, played by Frank Grillo. He's in Creature Commandos. He's in Superman. He's a main character in Peacemaker Season 2. Bringing him over into Lanterns and possibly even Clayface guaranteed, I would say. So maybe something like that to continue that story of the connected universe. Which brings us to what not to expect, or maybe do in case you're riding sky high, and that's the Justice League reboot announcement. So there's been rumors that James Gunn is rebooting the Justice League. There's nothing official on this, but you gotta picture the ending to Chapter 1, Gods and Monsters, is going to be some sort of team-up, probably a team-up that does involve the Justice League. They already got the Justice Gang, the Proto-Justice League, Superman apparently getting the idea to build a team for future threats and all that. This just makes sense. Now, hanging all your hopes on this being announced, I don't know if that's worth it, because think about it. If they announce a Justice League film, when are you going to get that? It's going to have to be years down the road. They're probably going to want to do a Superman 2. They're going to want a Batman out of the way. If they don't get him out of the way, who does the Justice League consist of? Superman, Green Lantern from the TV series, which is going to get watched by a fraction of the people that are going to watch the film, Supergirl, maybe. You don't even have a Wonder Woman. You don't have a Batman. You're missing so many key elements. So to me, announcing that film doesn't make sense. But what does make sense is announcing new projects and new directors. And maybe even Zack Snyder. So the last part of this, we're going to get into DC Studios, pie in the sky type of wishful thinking, or maybe not. So as most of you know, just recently, James Gunn did tease that more announcements would be made and that there's other projects gestating, and that anytime they get something they're confident with, they will announce that before they announce anything else. Hence why Clayface is moving forward before multiple projects that were announced but aren't happening, because they got a good idea. Enter pie in the sky wishful thinking rumors. Zack Snyder is going to be announced to be directing a DC Studios film, especially now that Netflix has dropped his Rebel Moon franchise for being a failure. So what exactly could they be doing? Well, I suspect James Gunn might announce another handful of projects, maybe even officially confirm that Sergeant Rock is happening, but just not this year, but that they got a good idea and they're going to do it. But on top of this, one project that's having a hard time getting off the ground is DC Studios' version of The Boys, also known as The Authority. Now, The Authority is supposed to be an R-rated property, and that's what they were teasing from day one. Bloody, Next level, visceral action, and over the top. You know who's a perfect pick to direct that? Zack Snyder. And not only that, many will argue that the best film Zack Snyder has ever made is his Dawn of the Dead, written by James Gunn. It's how the two became friends. So imagine getting a script by James Gunn and a great idea where Zack Snyder gets to be the cinematographer and the director. The framing of the shots would be amazing. He would add that Zack Snyder flair, but you got James Gunn handling the story and the depth of the characters, which is what he is a perfectionist at. It's a perfect match made in heaven. So if there is a pie in the sky announcement, it's not going to be Justice League because it's too soon. It's the Authority with James Gunn and Zack Snyder teaming up. I truly believe that this could be the thing that completely shocks the entire industry. So again, we're going to know soon as San Diego Comic-Con is right around the corner, but rest assured, you're not getting 2 slates or phases or chapters worth of announcements. You're going to get minimal and maybe one announcement that's the big one. And I actually do hope that it's one that shatters and breaks the internet with, honestly, people believing that it's fake because it's so absurd. Thank you for checking out that video, and thank you for your continued support. Feel free to like, share, subscribe, do whatever you will, and if you're so inclined and would like some additional content from us, which includes unfiltered content and bonus discussions, we do offer exclusively in our member section. We hope to see you there. So thank you for watching, and have a good one.